Here we have a Dyson V11. We're going to open up and explore the insides. How to disassemble it completely so you guys can clean it and reassemble it. Dyson V11 V15 look similar. They're basically the same machine, but Dyson V11 only has the screen for your modes. It doesn't show you the dust count. First of all, we're going to remove the filter. So I can show you how to disassemble the filter. We actually can disassemble the filter. So by getting a flathead screwdriver or a prying tool, we can remove this black rubber ring on the bottom. So you have to pry the rubber ring out. So once you get the rubber ring out, once you pry the rubber ring out, you can just pull it out. Since it's rubber, it stretches. So just twist it around, go around the circle, lift it up slowly, and it'll come out. Once it's out, we have to lift the inside out. There's actually clips. If you enlarge in the video, you might be able to see here, there's actually tabs here that stops the filter from coming out. So what we have to do is we have to put our fingers inside and push it out. So we can go around the clips or the tabs. If you can't do it by your hand, you might have to use your screwdriver or your prying tool to pry it up like this. Be careful when you pry it. Since the plastic is quite soft, you can actually snap it. If you pry it too hard, you start seeing white marks where the plastic gets stretched. After you pry it, after you pry all those up, you just take it off. So on top, there's these tabs or these cutouts. You need to align the cutouts correctly. So here's the tabs for the bottom. There's also cutouts for the top. That has to align with the cutout, these notches here. Please note it only goes in one way. So here's the notches. So the tabs on the bottom and the notches on top only align in one way. So if you don't have it in the correct sequence or order, it doesn't go in, you'll misalign the top or you'll misalign the bottom. So just remember carefully. So just to put it back, you just put it back like that. Just slide it over the top. There's also, you can also disassemble it further. It actually comes out as all these pieces here. But the problem is if you won't be able to reverse it, since there's glue and all these other stuff. In my other video, I do show you how to disassemble it to this far, but it's not recommended you to do that since you won't be able to reassemble it. After we put it back, we need to put our rubber ring on top. So we're going to store it. Remember the rubber ring only goes in one way as well, as the other way is actually the wrong way. Once you push it down, make sure have a look and check if it's working correctly. You insert it back into your vacuum cleaner to ensure it's aligned. And if that works out, then we're all fine. Next, we're going to remove the bin. So you pull out this part. There's also a red button here. So you can pull the red button to release it. You need a prying tool to remove the inner and the outer ring. So we put our prying tool underneath so we can stretch it. Once you stretch it enough, you can just use your hands and go around the ring. Please note the bottom of the ring there's a flat side and the top of the ring has no flat side. So you need to align it correctly. Or else when you close your bin, it doesn't close properly. So here you go. There's actually a bottom side here. The flat side goes this place. When you put it back in, you need to put the flat side in first, as it's a lot easier if you do it this way. You can do it the other way, but just technically more difficult. When you put it in, remember to just stretch it around. After you finish stretching it, remember to go around to adjust it so it's compressed and stretch correctly, as some places will be more compressed and some places will be more loose. So just make sure you go around and check again. Next, we're going to remove the middle ring. Please note, look at the line of where the ring has to go down. It's recommended you do not remove the ring because you're probably not going to be able to put it back properly. Because I'm doing disassembly, I'm going to remove it. To remove it, you just pull on it, yank on it, and it comes off like that. There is actually a cutout inside, and the cutout inside needs to fit into here. And also, if you can see there's black dots, that's actually glue or whatever they put in to hold the ring in place. So to put the ring back, put the ring on top, then you push it down evenly. Remember to push it down evenly, not one place only, because it will make one side compress and the other side stretch. So therefore the circle won't be circular. So I'm just going to get my prying tool to assist me to shove it down further. As I showed you before, you need to shove it down to the original line. If you don't, when you close your bin lid, it will actually stick out and not close properly. So that's why it's recommended for you not to remove this. So we just have to go around and check. We're going to put it back in our vacuum cleaner to check to check if it closed correctly. Close it. We go around the edges to see if there's any misaligned gaps. If there's misaligned gaps, we need to adjust it. So there is a misaligned gap. So I'm just going to readjust it as this part is more loose. Now I'll close it again. It seems like it's sealed correctly and it's closed correctly. Next, we're going to remove this part. You need a Torque T8 screwdriver to remove this screw before we can take it out. So if you're going to ask me where I buy my screwdriver set from, I bought it off eBay. But there's many places you can buy it from. And it cost me, I think it cost me 20 Australian dollars to buy the screwdriver set. Which comes with all your screws you need, or all your bits you need. That is recommended if you want to disassemble. Do not buy individually, as you need more than one set, or you need more than one bit to disassemble the whole vacuum cleaner. Next, we need to get tabs or guitar picks. So there's tabs here and grooves. We need to insert our guitar picks inside to lift it up. So the idea is we need to lift it up so that the tabs and the cutouts don't stop you from pulling it out. So once you have done that, it can now slide out. To put it back in, so here, there's actually the cutout. And here, there's also another cutout. So to put it back in, we need to align the screwdriver hole first. And it needs to go in diagonal like this. After you put it in, then you can just tap the top. Normally just hit it in, but since I need to continue my disassembly, I'm not going to put it in yet. Next, you need to get a flathead screwdriver and insert it into this hole. It actually needs to go in quite deep and go straight down. So you need to go in quite deep before you start prying up. After you pry it up, you can use your screwdriver to assist you to go around the circle. Be gentle, as there's actually tabs. If you snap the tabs, you won't be able to put this back properly. And I have snapped the tab before. So here's the ring. Please note, there's also these protrusions on the rings as well. So you need to align that with the bottom. If you don't align it correctly, you won't actually be able to close the lid. Here are the cutouts on the bottom that those protrusions need to be aligned with. So to do this, you need to align it correctly. So twist it until it's aligned correctly. Once you do that, there's actually a cutout on top here. So we need to make sure the ring sits in here as well. So you get where the prying part was, which aligns with the screw. You place it on top. After you place it on top, you lift the red ring up. You lift the red ring up so you ensure the red ring has gone into the cutout on top. Once you have ensured the red ring has gone into the cutout, now we put it back down. By aligning the prying hole with the screwdriver top, or where the screw went. This should make it align correctly. Put it on top, pull the red ring up. Then push it down. This ensures the red ring went into the top cutout and the red ring is aligned with the bottom. So if you have problems putting it back in, it means your alignment is not correct. Make sure you go around it once you're done to confirm that everything is correct and aligned correctly. And there's no holes. Now that we're done, we're going to put it back in. Just to show you, there was actually a misalignment. Make sure the top is aligned correctly. There's no gaps. Now to put it back in, we need to align this where the screw went with the other part. Now you just knock it in and it goes into place. Put your screw back in using your Torque T8 screwdriver. Now that we've done that, we need to put it back in our vacuum cleaner to test if everything's aligned correctly. Seems like it's aligned correctly. Remember to go around your vacuum cleaner to check. Next, we're going to remove the Cyclone and the filter part. You need a Phillips head screwdriver to remove it. Here's my Phillips head screwdriver. It just needs to be a plus shape and it should be fine. Please note, you also need a long Phillips head screwdriver. It needs to be this long. If it's not that long, it won't actually fit in the hole. So that's the reason why. So we need a long screwdriver for the top 4 screws. And there's 2 screws near where the rail is for the bin. So if you can't use your multi-bit screwdriver because the multi-bit screwdriver won't fit in the hole at the top where the cyclones are. So you need a screwdriver that's 1 whole piece, long and small, so it can go in deeper. As you can see here, it actually goes in deep. So if you don't have a proper screwdriver, you won't be able to remove it. Now that we remove the screws, we can just pull the top part off and it comes off like that. You can slide it back on. Remember, it slides in. It just doesn't just go in. You didn't make sure it slides on this. Make sure you align it correctly or else it doesn't actually go in. On here, there's actually rails. To put it back in, you need to align it correctly. Once it's aligned, you can then push it in. Next, we need to remove the rail. To remove it, you need your Torque T8 screwdriver. There's just one Torque T8 on this. After you remove it, the screw normally stays in there. But just be careful, it can actually drop out. To put it back, you need to align this with the screw holes. Please note, if your bin just flies out when you chuck your rubbish, it means you need to replace your rail, which happens often on the V10, V11, and V15. Next, we need to remove 4 screws, 4 Torque T8 screws on top. After you remove the 4 screws, you can just lift this part up. Please note, there's actually string. That string is actually your power connector to power your tools, such as your power heads, your fluffy head, and your whatever it's called. So to put it back, you need to align the screw holes together. We need to remove the connector. To remove the connector, I am going to use chopsticks. So what we need to do is we need to put just chopsticks on the inside. So we need to put it on the inside so we can push the connector out. So basically, you can look at the front. The idea is it needs to go to the left and the right side of the connector, but on the inside. Once that has happened, we need to hold it in place and get our hammer so we can actually force it out the front. Please be careful and remember to have a look in case you actually misalign it. You won't be able to force it out by your hand. You actually have to use a hammer or something to knock it against. So I'm just going to have to move to the side since my table is just too soft. When I knock it, it just rumbles. And also the connector hits the table when I try to knock it out. So we have to hang the connector part outside so it can actually, when it gets pushed out, actually can go outside and not hit the table. So it's a bit hard to show you, but if you have it in front of you, you'll probably understand what I mean. So I have to stick it out a bit, get my hammer, give it a few knocks. As you can see, the connector has now stick out a bit. Once the connector has came out, I can now use my chopstick to just push it out. And here you go. There's actually a latch. So we have to open the latch to open it. So when you open the latch, the black is on the latch side and the white is on the hinge side. Make sure you have your connector thing here on the outside, or else you won't be able to close your door on the latch on the connector, as it has protrusions, and those protrusions stop those cables from falling out. So to put your cables back, you need to make sure that it's aligned correctly and facing the correct direction. Now that we removed our connector, we can now remove our top. There's this rubber ring on the top. You can also remove it. It just stretches. Just stretch it out and it'll come out. On the rubber ring, there's actually a protrusion that shows you which way it goes back in. So here, you need to align that with the cutout on the top. When you put it back in, remember to go around it and I guess align it again, or else it doesn't. Some places are stretched more than others, making it crooked. So go around it again, give it a bit of wiggle, so it can loosen the tension. Next, we need our Torque T8 screwdriver again, so we can remove 3 screws on the bottom. we remove the 3 screws, there's this here, this square. It makes it hard to remove. So what you need to do is you need to get a screwdriver or prying tool so you can pry this part open up. This allows us to remove the filter part as it sits flush. Also, you need to go to the opposite side and pull. That makes life a lot easier. Once you have a gap like this, you can stick a prying tool inside to keep the gap open. So we're just sticking a prying tool inside to keep our gap open. Now that our gap is open, we have tension on the other side. As you can see here, this actually is flush with the filter. So therefore, it makes it really hard for you to pull out. So now we're going to get our screwdriver or prying tool so we can pry it up slightly so it doesn't sit flush anymore. As you can see, it just popped up a bit. Now that's popped up a bit, we can actually remove the top, as now it can slide over. When this sits flush with the square, it makes it extremely difficult for you to take it out. So that's why we have to create tension, and then it allows us to pry it open. There's actually rails on this as well. So you need to align the rail on the inside with the outside. So if you look here, this is the rail that needs to meet with the inner rail. So to put it back in, you basically just need to align the square, the outer square with the inner square, and it should align the rail correctly. You can also align the screwdriver holes, which is probably easier. You can remove this rubber ring. This rubber ring just it seals the back with the back of your bin. You just need to lift it off. There's nothing holding it, nothing special about it. We need our torque T8 screwdriver to remove 4 screws on the bottom. We remove our 4 screws. We need to unwrap our cable. So we just need to push the cable back into the rings to unwrap it. Because the ring hole is small, you only can do 1 cable at a time. Please note, if this is the first time you've opened up your vacuum cleaner, these rings will actually be covered in shrinking wrap, which you just have to cut. So after you undo one cable at a time, you can just take out your rings, and remember to keep your rings. Your rings is used to it's for electricity purposes, to smooth out the electricity run. So after you remove that, you can just lift it up. When you put your strings back in, remember to put your strings back in the correct hole. And how you know which one's the correct hole? It's the one that, if you look at it, you can see it's a lot bigger and smaller than normal. To put back your rings, remember we have to put at one, only one can go in at a time due to the size of the strings. After you put one in at a time, you can then pull them back so they can be the same length. But when you insert it into the hole, only one can go in due to the connector part is too large if you put two in at once. So now that I have insert both in, now I'm just going to tighten them so they wrap around the same. So now to take it back out, I'm just going to take out one at a time as it only fits in the hole like that. So when you take out your inner filter, remember to make note of which hole it's supposed to come out from. So when you put it back in, you know which one it goes in. Now that we remove that, we can actually now disassemble the Cyclone part. There's no screws, you can just lift it up. We're just going to remove our rubber ring to make it life easier. So just hold the one part and take the other and the back part off, and it just comes off. It separates into, in theory, three. There's actually 6 pieces, but it only separates into 3. So here's your Cyclone. In the Cyclone, there's an inner Cyclone and the outer Cyclone. The outer Cyclone actually has rails for the inner Cyclone to glide in on. So we're just going to get the inner Cyclone. And here's the guides. So we're just going to put the guides back in. For your purposes, you can actually stop here and go clean it. After you clean it and make sure it dries, you can reassemble it. So to take out the Cyclone, you just take it out. But to put it in place, remember to put in the guide rails. For this, just push in from the inside and it comes off. And if you align it correctly, you can just push it back in. This here, grey and red ring, are gaskets. So the idea is it's for it to seal up the gaps. Be careful when you clean these and take these out, because these can actually rip. And if they rip, there's actually a hole in your vacuum cleaner, so you lose suction. So just be careful with the gaskets or the seals, whatever you like to call them. So here are the 6 pieces. This is just what it looks like once you clean it. So I went out to my garden and got my spray hose and sprayed it down. As you can see, it's a lot cleaner than what it looked after it's been used. So you don't need to do much, you just need to put your garden hose. If you don't have a garden hose, I guess you can just use your normal water and a brush to brush it off. So we're going to put the gasket back. So to put the gasket back, remember to align where the power connector goes with for both of them, so they align correctly. And once you put them in the hole, they should just go in. Remember to press them down gently in case you rip it. Same thing with the red one. After you put the gasket and the seals back in, remember to check they're in correctly, else they might be creased or crimpled up. Next, we need to put our inner cyclone and outer cyclone together. So we're going to align the rails and slide it in. We need to put our gasket part slightly over the top. If you don't do this, to put the back part in is going to be extremely difficult. That's why you have to put it in a particular order. Once it's in, you just remove it again if you need to, so you can check the alignment. I'm just checking the alignment to make sure nothing's creased. Now is that complete, we're going to put our rubber ring back in. If you're missing this rubber ring, your seal with your filter and your bin isn't complete, so your dust will start falling out. Next, we need to put the inner one back in. So we're going to slide the strings into the hole. There's a hole here, as you can see. There's a small little hole there. You need to put it back in and it goes through to the other side. If you put the string in the wrong hole, when you try to assemble it, you'll realize that there's something wrong. You just take it out and redo it. Once that's done, we need to put our 4 T8 screws in. Make sure you put it in the correct hole. There's actually another 3 holes, which is for the outer filter. If you want to know what the correct hole is before you put the inner part in, it actually tells you where the 4 screws go. If you stuff up, when you try to put out in the outer filter, it will block you. So therefore, that's how you confirm. You can always use the outer filter as a guide to ensure that you put the screws in the right hole. So 2 screws go next to the connector, and then there's one that goes at I think 2 o'clock and the other one goes at 10 o'clock if you look at it as a clock face. Next, when you put our outer filter in, remember to align your square with your square on the inside. Also align your screw holes. This will tell you which screw goes where and how you know you stuffed up. Remember to align the rails. There's 2 rails on each side of the screws, the square. So I'm just looking from the top, so no. And when you go down, you can check if the screw holes are correct. If you find a problem, you probably misaligned it, like what I just did. So I have to do it again. Once it's aligned correctly, just push it all the way down and it should click in. Next, we need to put our rings back onto our cables. As I said previously, remember to put only one string at a time, as the hole is only big enough for one string to go in at a time. So after you put it in, you just have to loop them back over, basically like tying a knot. Once both strings are through the hole, remember to tighten it. Make sure your rings are slightly lower and remember the original position, because if you don't, when you put the top part in, it actually blocks it. So be careful. So now we need to put the strings back through the hole. The hole is here, so remember to align it correctly. So the hole here aligns with the hole over this side. Make sure you have your strings nice and straight, or else it's actually quite difficult to feed in. So I just have to bend my cables and make it more straight, as when it goes through the hole, it's actually hitting something, so it's not pumping up on the other side. So here, you can see it poking through. Once it pokes through, we're going to just put it down. We now need to get our connector and make sure it sits through in properly. So just going to get the connector. Remember, for the connector, the white string actually goes on the inside of the hinge, and the black string goes on the outside. You also need to make sure your string I just had to check my video again to ensure that the cable is in the correct place. So the white string goes on the inside of the hinge, and the black one goes on the outside. Make sure your connector hole is aligned correctly, or else you can't close the door. Made a mistake in the video. The white one actually goes on the inside of the hinge, but I put the white one on the black one on the inside. If you put your strings the wrong way, it actually just makes the head spin the wrong way. So try not to do that. So after you're done, you just need to push it in, and it goes in place. We're going to have to put our screws in. So 3 for the bottom and 4 for the top part. Now that we're done putting all the screws, we need to turn it around to inspect if everything's aligned. We need to get our vacuum cleaner out to test it. So I forgot to put the bin rail back in. So we're just going to get our bin rail out and align it. You need your Torque T8 screwdriver to put the screw back in. We're now going to get our motor and battery, main body, and we're going to remove the battery first. So you need your Phillips head screwdriver to move 3 screws to remove your battery. This screw here, the holder for it normally breaks and causes you to have trigger problems. So if you have some odd reason your trigger it keeps on holding down, or your vacuum doesn't stop vacuuming, it's probably because your battery is actually falling down due to that screw, the first one. So after you remove the 3 screws, you just pull the battery out. The reason why I'm showing you to remove the battery is if you want to replace your trigger, there's actually a Torque T8 screwdriver under the battery. This is where you have to remove the battery. And since I'm going to show you how to remove the motor, it's recommended that you remove the battery so it doesn't run while you're removing the motor. So after you remove the screws, just take it out and it comes out. Next, we're going to remove the motor. So you need your Torque T8 screwdriver to remove the 2 screws on the white thing. Please note, on the V11, for those who bought it later, and V15, there is no point doing this step as they have glued down the circuit board, making it not possible for you to remove. So therefore, you cannot also remove the trigger. But if you got one of the first versions of them, or when it was first released, then they did not glue it down. So after we remove the screws, we just need to get our prying tool so we can pry this white part off. You just need to push the connector back and it actually falls down. So if you push the connector out forward, it pops up and you can just pull it. So just push it down with a bit of force, and it will just pop back in. So next, we need to remove these Torque T8 screws. We also need to remove the connector. That's the on and off connector. So we need to remove the on and off connector. We need to remove our 2 screws for our power terminals. So this is why we need to remove the battery, in case you stuff up and you connect it together and you short circuit the system. So as I was talking previously, so this here, the green circuit board, you can see that on the newer models, they actually glued it, they glued cover in glue, so you can't do this step or remove the following. So after that, we undo the screws. We need to bend the power connectors back a bit. So the reason if we need to bend it back a bit is so it's straighter, and it allows us to remove the motor. With it in an L shape, it's actually really difficult for us to take the motor out. So I'm just going to get my pliers to bend those cables back even further. But it seems like that was unnecessary. Here's your motor. Next, there's actually 2 screws on top and also a Torque T8 screw on the bottom. So since the area is small, you just need to get your Phillips head screwdriver, the head, and I have a small thing that allows me to twist the head in small situations like this. Both screws are removed. We need to get our prying tool, which is my flathead screwdriver, to lift up this piece. There's actually clips holding it down, and you also need to feed the cables through this for you to remove the piece. So it's recommended that you either bend the cables back a bit so it fits through this piece, or you actually turn them onto the side as there's more space. I actually turned them onto the side, so now I can remove the piece. So this is just the cover. I'm just going to get a tissue and clean my table since it's dusty. So here, just to show you, it goes in. There's also 2 clips on the side here that clips in place. So for the cables, we just need to bend it back and straight so we can actually remove the trigger from the bottom. So for this case, you need your Torque T8 screwdriver that is long and thin. I'm just want to check if I got the right screwdriver. As you can see, it needs to be this long and it needs to be thin, or else you won't be able to insert it in to remove the screw inside.